Good evening and welcome to HMG Network, broadcasting live from the Greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan. My name is Freeman Singirankabo, and this is a special coverage at the same time breaking news. Studio this evening is my brother Claude Gatebuke, who's the executive director of the African Great Lakes Action Network. Claude Gatebuke, good evening, buddy. How are you?
Good evening, Freeman. Doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on such a short notice, Claude. Tonight we're having an exclusive breaking news done from Rwanda as it relates to Mama Idamange. Can you go ahead and jump right in, Claude?
Yes. So the reason that we're having this broadcast is because the Miss Idamange, who most of the audience watching here is probably unfamiliar with, is a Rwandan woman. Rwanda is a small country in Central Africa. She came out in late January, at the end of January, and pretty much took all of social media, Rwandan social media, by storm. She came out criticizing the government of Paul Kagame, the Rwandan government led by the RPF, or the Rwandan Patriotic Front. The RPF is the party in power. Rwanda is a very authoritarian and dictatorial regime that does not tolerate dissent. So when she came out and criticized the government, fans and supporters of the government started going after her violently, verbally first. Then within a few weeks, her son, a teenager, 16-year-old, was snatched from the home by authorities, taken away, kept for 14 hours, and then after a lot of noise, the son was returned. A few days later, she was arrested, and this was on February 15th. So a little bit over 2 weeks ago, she was violently arrested. I mean, we have footage and pictures and videos of people jumping over her fence and going in to arrest her. And what we know is that since her arrest, she's been held in custody. The Rwanda Investigative Bureau, which is also known as the RIB, in a detention center where she's been handcuffed and shackled the whole time she's been there. So she's under torture, psychological and physical. And tomorrow, or this here in the US, it's going to be tomorrow, but it's already morning time in Rwanda and a lot of parts of the world. In a few hours, she is going to trial or to a hearing, and that's
happening this evening. We had some unconfirmed reports from very, very reliable sources that RIB, which is the Rwandan Investigative Bureau, has changed the manners by which is going to conduct the trial tomorrow. So from our understanding, it seems like it's going to be YouTube's. It seems like we are going to they are definitely going to have a trial which is private, meaning the public will not actually be participating in the event. And that is extremely concerning because the charges by which she's being attributed to cannot be. I don't think personally that she can receive a fair trial if the trial is actually being held in secret. Claude, what can you say about that? The fact that they're anticipating to have this trial in secret as opposed to a public. For example, most of you know Paul Rusesabagina, who's also having a public trial in Rwanda. Now, I understand if it was some sort of a COVID-19 measure that they're trying to have some sort of secret trial going on. But what's going on, Claude? Why are we going to have a secret trial for an open outcry sort of like issue going on in the whole entire country?
I think the government of Rwanda wants to hold a secret trial so that they can, because they don't have evidence, they are cooking up evidence anyway in a lot of these trials. I mean, if you look at how ridiculous they look in the Paul Rusesabagina trial, why would they subject themselves again to the public embarrassment of, and by the way, for those of you who, again, most of you probably do not know Rwanda, but Paul Rusesabagina is the person it portrayed in the film Hotel Rwanda, who sheltered over 1,200 people during the genocide in Rwanda. But because he's such a harsh critic of the government of Rwanda, he was kidnapped from Dubai 6 months ago, taken to Rwanda, and now he's on trial for they're accusing him of terrorism. Of course, we know that this is such a catch-all, catch-all accusation. We know that they also the apartheid government in South Africa called Nelson Mandela a terrorist, and many places, many people, similar people, have been called terrorists. But he's being accused of terrorism by a government that's actually terrorizing its own population and neighbors in the Congo, where Kagame's troops have killed over 6 million people. So all that to say, to give you a little bit of background. So Paul Rusesabagina, being somebody that's well known, his trial is public, but it's such an embarrassment to the government of Rwanda the way it's looking. And that is why Miss Idamange today is, what they're trying to give her a private trial where no one is going to see, no one is going to know, the public is not going to see what's happening in her trial. And of course, that's all to avoid the embarrassment, but also we know, one of the things that we know with the government of Rwanda, they do a lot of things in hiding, which is why it's important to shine light on those things. For example, these private trials to me are similar to what they do in military detentions. They use military detentions to detain civilians so that they can torture them, force them to confess, and just make them do all kinds of unconventional things that they can do in military trials and military detentions. So it's the same what they're doing here in a private trial, where they don't want the public to see, so that they can pretty much run the trial the way they want, and it's not documented. Because for one, we know that she's not going to get a fair trial. We based on past experience, what we've seen in the past with others like Kizito Mihigo, for example, who was tortured and made to confess. He's a gospel singer. Kizito Mihigo was a gospel singer who was accused also of terrorism, a gospel singer accused of terrorism. Then he was tried he was tortured, tried, made to confess, sentenced to 10 years. He was pardoned after 4 years. So his trial was 2014. 2018, he was released on a presidential pardon.
Along with Victoire, I think, right?
Yes, with Victoire Ingabire, another critic of the government who also served. She served 8 years, 8 or 15. And 2 years after they released Kizito Mihigo, they arrested him again and then assassinated him in the prison, and claimed that he hung himself in a sheet and killed himself, which, of course, he had previously been out of prison. Then he spent 6 years in prison, didn't commit suicide. Then was out for almost 2 years, didn't commit suicide. And all of a sudden, he goes in detention in the custody of the government, and somehow he kills himself.
Committed suicide in 2 days.
Yeah. What happens is basically this practice of unfair trials. So he had an unfair trial. Another critic, Deom Shaidi, he had an unfair trial. Victoire Ingabire, she had an unfair trial. Ms. Diane Wigara, Victoire Ingabire and Diane Wigara both ran for president against Kagame, and he decided to jail them instead of letting him run. She had an unfair trial, and she spent a year in detention, then was released. There was 2 women journalists in I believe it was 2010 or maybe it was in the 2010s. One spent 4 years and the other spent, I believe, 7 years for criticizing the president. So anytime you criticize the government of Rwanda, anytime you criticize the president Kagame, you pay a heavy price. So we do not expect a fair trial for Ms. Idamange, but because the public is so ready to really, really scrutinize this trial, they want to keep it in hiding away from the public. One more
Is this
thing.
even legal that they would actually decide to put it all in secret as if it's some sort of military trumped up charges? I just don't understand the type of democracy we have right now in Rwanda.
But normally, the trial is supposed to be public.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're using the cover of coronavirus.
Even with that, what's so different from what Rusesabagina just had? I mean, he's had public trial, including cameras. You can actually follow the trials live. Why can Miss Idamange have the same thing, given that she's only one individual? I'm not quite sure what the COVID-19 pretext is how is gonna even help him. As far as the reason being, it's the trial is gonna be secret.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's no difference for sure. But of course, they come up with all kinds of excuses. And Rwanda is not like a country that has rule of law. I mean, they just do whatever they want. Whatever Kagame wants is what they do. So there was a hearing today of a journalist. His name is Hassani Humus. That it also happened that way. He was on video. I don't know if it was today or yesterday. I'm not 100% sure. I think it was. Gotta double check because the days here in the U.S. and the days in Rwanda, sometimes it's a little bit of a mix. But he also had a hearing that was not public. It was over video, and here he is, and there's no one knows what's happening, and they're eventually going to sentence him. So this is something that they're doing, and they've been doing for some time now. There's also in addition to just in the last few weeks, there's when we talk about critics, there is a well-known poet in Rwanda, an artist. His name is Bahati Musa. Bahati Musa has been missing since I believe it was February 5th, and the government hasn't shown where he is. This is a place that is so well controlled. They actually know they have like a monitoring system for every 10 housing units. And they also claim it's very highly secure, and they have not shown where he is. We suspect that his life may be in danger at the hands of the authorities. So all of this that's happening, it requires hiding and darkness, and they hide under the cover of darkness or in secrecy to continue to abuse people's rights. And that's what's happening with Ms. Idamange. They need to hold a public trial if they want to be transparent. But with all the scrutiny, both by Rwandan people and the international community on Rwanda, they are now using these unconventional methods of holding a secret trial.
What can we expect from the international community as far as helping the people?
Okay, it looks like there's an issue with the feed. Can you hear me, studio?
Yes, I can actually hear you, Claude. Can you hear me?
Okay. Gonna hold on.
Okay. So I think I may
Studio,
have.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Claude, but I don't think you can hear me. I think we might have an issue with the uplink right now. Claude, if you can hear me, it sounds like we're having some connection issues right now.
While we wait for the studio to come back on, we are currently right now talking about, or for Freeman to reconnect, his audio. We're currently talking about the trial of Miss Idamange, a Rwandan woman who is on going on trial in Rwanda for speaking out, for criticizing the government for its policies, for saying so much of what Rwandan people know and think and see, but are afraid to say. And she's for that she's being punished, and she's been tortured. She's been in detention for weeks, and for 2 weeks now, more than 2 weeks now, and shackled and in handcuffs. And just wanted to we wanted to make sure that we shine a light on what's happening, because we got news that they are wanting to put her on trial in a secret trial where the public wouldn't get to see what what's happening in the trial.
Thank you, Claude. If you can hear me, I'm using audio. We may have lost the studio uplink, but can you still hear me via audio right now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I was asking if what, if anything, the international community can actually do to assist Mama Idamange right now.
I think number one is it starts with the donor nations. The countries that actually provide aid to Rwanda should make aid conditional on Rwanda upholding human rights. So as they abuse people like. In addition, I think people, the international community, people of goodwill, need to speak up. So use social media, use other means, and make sure that the world knows what's happening. Because one of the things that they bank on, that the government of Kagame, the Kagame's government banks on, is basically they claim that it's such a progressive country. They support, they have like a high number of women in parliament, the highest percentage of women in parliament, that they have some really clean streets. The city of Kigali is really nice and everything. So there is all this propaganda and all this PR that shows the government of Rwanda as being very progressive, but really the world should know Kagame for the dictator that he is. So individuals should definitely share this video, share other videos, and share the news about the repression of Paul Kagame inside of Rwanda and the aggression and invasions of neighboring countries like Congo, and show really what Kagame is and who he is, and make sure that the world knows. So that's the second thing. The third thing is there should be some travel bans, on Kagame and his people who are around him, the leadership of Rwanda. I mean, this is a government that actually admitted last week that they kidnapped Paul Rusesabagina from Dubai. I mean, they've admitted it multiple times, including Kagame saying that it was a flawless operation. But they also just now recently admitted that they actually paid. The Minister of Justice, Johnson Busingye, told Al Jazeera that the government paid for something like that. So I think there should definitely be sanctions, economic and especially targeted sanctions on the government of Rwanda, and definitely sanctions on military aid. There should be no military aid going to Rwanda.
Thank you, Claude. And what about the family, Miss Idamange's family?
Those are the main things that I think the international community should do in terms of dealing with the government of Rwanda in regards to this trial, the recurring and ongoing repression and oppression of Rwandan people, the ongoing invasions and insecurity that they're causing in the Congo, including possibly that they assassinated the recently killed Italian ambassador in the Congo, along with a bunch of Congolese people. So they should be held accountable. And eventually, there must be an international tribunal to try the crimes documented in the UN mapping report. Those crimes were committed in the Congo, but the main perpetrators are Kagame and his troops. And I think all of those are things that the international community should do to hold the Kagame regime accountable.
Thank you, Claude. And do you have any update as far as the family is concerned? Any news from the family?
No, nothing to share with the public. Basically, I would like to keep the comments on the trial and what's going on with Mr. Idamange and the policies, what the public can do, but nothing to share with the public right now about the family.
Thank you, Claude. Last but not least, we know that the public has attempted to have demonstration, and for some reason it was not given. They weren't given the right to demonstrate, and we understand that there is some sort of a demonstration sometimes next week. Do you have any comment as far as the demonstration?
Yeah, that is the really interesting thing about Rwanda. So they have these, for example, these coronavirus measures, oppressive, crazy measures, beyond even most Western countries, which is one of the things that actually brought out Ms. Idamange to actually complain. And at the same time, they arrest people in jam and fill them in the stadiums. And sometimes you wonder why not even just why have empty games if you're filling people in the stadiums, and they can be exposed to coronavirus. In addition, they destroyed people's houses right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's interesting that the government takes all of these crazy measures against the people, but then they turn around and say, they are protecting people for their safety, and so I just think, the measures by the government are way, 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 way off and unreasonable for a country like Rwanda, where people basically live hand to mouth, and incoherent. They're also incoherent. There's so much incoherent in what the government does and practices and what they say that they do. I just think that and hope that Rwandan people now, the demonstrations that we're talking about. So on Monday, they're going to hold a demonstration, even though you're not allowed to have large gatherings, except in the stadiums, which is what I was talking about, in the stadiums where the government basically brings a bunch of people to hold them for coronavirus violations. Now they're going to hold demonstrations against this woman who spoke up against the government. So they're basically throwing people in the streets to go demonstrate against somebody who spoke out against the government. This is not new. They've actually done it in previous times when criminals, mass murderers, generals that are part of this government were arrested for their crimes in other countries. They would bring people out, force people out to come and demonstrate. Other times that they force people to demonstrate is when Kagame is running for elections. He runs by himself, but he still holds rallies. He arrests basically every credible opponent, but he still holds rallies. So they bring people, together. So anytime it's like a government rally, they'll do that. And what's happening, basically this demonstration that's supposed to happen on Monday of women standing up against this young lady who is really taking a stance for all Rwandans is a government rally. But I also want to talk about other demonstrations. There's been demonstrations around the world in support of Ms. Idamange, which have taken places in places in Paris or various parts of France, in Brussels, in Switzerland, in Geneva, and many other places. And what I even, by the way, Rwanda, but it was interesting demonstration.
Can you explain that, please? Elaborate. What's so special about that?
Well, it's because the government didn't realize that people were demonstrating. Because they did it in such a creative way. The government didn't know that they were, even though they had all these policemen and all these people out there to arrest them. They couldn't catch them because they didn't know.
the people were demonstrating. But then there was another demonstration that took place and given coronavirus online, where a group of Rwandans, including yourself, Freeman, and myself, took part in. And there were over 5,000 people that actually took part in the demonstration. It was held online, and it was live streamed. It's a new kind of a different way of doing it. It was my first time seeing that kind of demonstration.
Yeah.
But it was a way to show support, and there was over 5,000 people that were actually live present at the demonstration. So that's it as far as the demonstrations goes for what's planned by the government of Rwanda to happen on Monday, on the 8th, and what the people did on this past weekend, this past Sunday, in terms of a large demonstration online, but also physical demonstrations in various places. There's also other demonstrations planned at the end of this month in various parts of the world that are coming up, and I'm sure, in our upcoming broadcasts, we'll be talking about those.
Now, I know that most people all over the world are not familiar with the fact that Rwanda has the majority female, the majority women in parliament. Has there been any word from the women who hold actually these powerful position as far as Idamange is concerned?
No, nothing in support of her, but that's to be expected in a country like Rwanda. Everybody follows whatever the military, it's a military dictatorship led by Paul Kagame. So the soldiers and the president basically run it. And, the women in parliament are pretty much, they just follow what happens. They rubber stamp what Kagame wants. So they haven't spoken up for Ms. Idamange. They haven't spoken up for their fellow women. And by the way, this isn't the first time. Last year, around this time, there was soldiers were going to some of the most highly populated parts of Rwanda under the cover of coronavirus curfews, and they were raping women. This parliament didn't say anything. They didn't stand up for them. And so this is nothing new. Also in 2015, when Kagame was changing the constitution so that he can run and basically be president for life. He extended his terms to be president until 2034. So he would be in charge of the country for basically 40 years by then. And all of that to say is the women in parliament just went along and rubber stamped the change in the constitutional change. And then fast forward to 2020, women are being raped in some of these highly populated areas of Rwanda, and no, they're not saying anything. Fast forward to 2021, a fellow woman is being arrested, brutalized for simply speaking up for Rwandan people, and parliament is nowhere to be seen. The majority women in parliament is nowhere to be seen, not heard from, not talking about the person that they represent. They're just rubber stamping what the government, the military, and Paul Kagame are basically doing.
I hate to ask this, Claude, but you can choose to respond to this or not, but are we kind of screwed right now when it comes to justice in Rwanda? Let's say for what it is. I mean, if she cannot get a fair trial, and the fact that she was actually raided on in her home, she didn't, as far as we have checked, there was no arrest warrant when she was taken out from her, from her house, from her compound. The police literally broke through the house, and up to this moment, there were little to no charges against her as to why the Rwandan government would actually have taken the measures that they have taken. And I'm wondering if Rwanda claims that it is one of the most advanced nation when it comes to justice, one of the most advanced nation when it comes to women's issues and gender equality. How can this be done? How can this be? How is it that we're witnessing what we are witnessing right now when it comes to the arrest of Miss Idamange? And why is it that women in the country especially those in parliament, are completely mule about this?
You asked if we're screwed.
Yes.
I don't think so. On one hand, right now the dictatorship they have her in custody, but the more they do these things, the more the world knows what they really are, and eventually, as more light is shown on their darkness, they're gonna run out. They're gonna run out of steam, and eventually, Ms. Idamange is gonna be free. Paul Rusesabagina is gonna be free. Kima Hassan is gonna be free, and they still are gonna be wanted for the crimes that they're committing against Rwandans and the crimes that they commit against Congolese people. So they're just adding to their own record. Right now, in the moment, yes, they have the upper hand, but eventually, they actually are gonna pay for these crimes that they're committing against the people of Central Africa, the people of the Great Lakes region of Africa. So for me, we're not screwed. It's just a matter of time, but we gotta keep working. We gotta keep shining light on this.
Claude, thank you so much. Now, I'd like to give you a last word. And by the way, we'd like to apologize to our listeners. This is I'm speaking to Claude. I'm using the phone. Somehow we lost the uplink in the middle of the interview, which is why you can't see us as good as we were. So, Claude, my apologies that we were not able to actually speak to you the way we had anticipated earlier. Any last words?
The last word is I would like for everybody that's watching to hashtag Rwanda Free Idamange, so that whoever sees it, they know it's in Rwanda, because most people just don't know where Rwanda is. The other thing is continue to speak up, share these videos, talk about these things that are happening, because dictatorships love to operate in dark. Mass murderers love to operate in the dark. Genocidaires love to operate in the dark. And for us to make sure that we stop this, and we know we can, we have to shine light on it. So I'm asking the audience to just continue to shine light on this and continue to demand an open trial for Miss Idamange.
Thank you so much, Claude. Claude is one of our contributors. He's been extremely loyal to all the event that we usually have. He's also my brother. He's extremely awesome when it comes to coming through all the time, especially right now when we actually reach out to him in such a short notice. For those of you who do not know Claude, he's the executive director for the African Great Lakes Action Network. Claude Getibuke, thank you so much, my brother.
Thank you, Freeman. Thank you, HMG, for hosting this and continuing to shine a light on these things. Thank you for the platforms.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are currently listening live from other stations, the issue of Miss Idamange, it's such a it is just mind-boggling, the fact that the Rwandan government, it's unwilling to give a fair trial, unwilling to give a public trial, and I'm wondering what's with all the factors. Why is it that she can't get a fair trial when they actually claim that Rwanda is one of the countries that actually follows rules of law? Just minding you that 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, when the European Parliament had when they had the meeting about torture. They have mentioned Rwanda as one of the countries currently really violating torture as one of the things that's being done to the prisoners. And currently, Mama Idamange, or Miss Idamange, I should say, she's been going through a lot. And we want to ask of you that you please reach out to the Rwandan authorities, reach out to your embassies and your representatives in Rwanda, just to ensure that she gets justice. It is all she's been asking on behalf of the fellow Rwandans. And right now, actually, she also needs our help to render that justice on, for herself as well. And with that in mind, fellas, ladies and gentlemen, we are so grateful that you have been with us as we have this breaking news when it comes to Idamange. Tomorrow, we are going to follow the trial. We know it's going to be a secret trial, but we also do have some eyes. So whatever the news that we do get, we will absolutely bring it to you live. And we also want you to stay tuned for Monday, because on Monday also, we have received news that the Rwandan government is forcing the public to go demonstrate against Miss Idamange for speaking out and for asking justice for the rest of the Rwandans. With that in mind, I want to say thank you to all of you for having followed this breaking news that we have right now. And before we break it even, I just want to ask all of you again to pray for Miss Idamange, because the situation she's in right now, it is a dire situation. And we know that you've always been together with us Rwandans, especially when we're having some issues. Throughout the genocide, you've been with us. Throughout all difficulties, you are with us. And we also want that you still extend, an arm of friendship, a prayer for Miss Idamange and her family as she goes through these difficult times. And with this in mind, I want to be grateful to all of you for having followed. And we ask you that you tune in again and again and again, as we will continue to bring in all live coverage and breaking news, especially from Rwanda. And with that in mind, guys and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Until next time, I am Freeman with HMG Network here in Washington, D.C. Good night for now. Until next time.